34-26, and a massive moment in this season for the Commanders, who have now dropped 3 straight. Don't let the scoreboard fool you. Late yards, late points, following a largely lackluster offensive effort by the Commanders, who now find themselves inching ever closer to a crowded NFC wildcard picture. Fellas, this is one of those games that you have a hard time explaining what you saw. It is, however, our jobs. What did you see from Washington? Let's start at the end and work backwards. Slow to start, but in those final moments, you make the play, and it's the K game that can't get it done.
Yeah, it's funny because they got better as the pressure started to ratchet up, which tells you that this team is locked in with their head coach, Dan Quinn. But what we saw the entire game was an offense that was highly inconsistent. No running game to speak of outside of Jayden Daniels scrambling a little bit. They couldn't run the football. They made themselves one-dimensional. And on top of that, the defense just didn't do a good job of getting off the field. So it was a complete combination of errors for the Washington Commanders up until the final 5 minutes of the ball game when things had to get done. It's like you wait for the last minute to do that test or turn in that term paper. They did a great job to get back to the ball game, but the football guys will always make sure the right team will win, because at the end of the day, you don't miss that extra point.
Yeah, should have gone for 2. I don't know what the analytics said, but I thought maybe they had, because to your point, they had not been as efficient as they were early in the season under Cliff Kingsbury. And there's a whole conversation about second half Cliff Kingsbury. How does that look compared to first half? Because in Arizona, those offenses were on fire, and then those teams sort of fell off the cliff offensively. But I'll say this, Dallas has won 6 of 7 against Washington now, going back 7 games. And in those games, they've scored over 30 points. Once again, 34. I don't think anyone would imagine this, given that Dan Quinn had left Dallas. And Mike Zimmer's defenses have struggled, and what he had done in Washington, and we talked about the offense and them having success. But maybe Cooper Rush is the short-term answer. We talked about whether they needed to go to the backup quarterback and give him a chance, and Trey Lance, and we're not at practice, and Cooper is good enough to get them close in games like this. But I think the bigger story is the fact that the Commanders are now 7-5. They're the 7th seed.
Yeah.
A month ago, we were saying this team's going to win the division, and we'll see how the rookie performs under pressure. He's seen pressure before at the college level. This will be different. The last month of the season, they typically don't play 17 games in college, so there's that to concern themselves with as well. It'll be fun to watch, because it's funny how this roller coaster ride goes in terms of Rookie of the Year MVP, and now we're talking about, okay, let's dial it back and make things easier for him.
I will take every opportunity I am given to remind people that this year's 2-point conversion rate, 31%. CC the analytics department. I know there's a lot of unforced 2-point conversion happening, but in that moment, maybe that is the lever you pull after the way they played, and that's what I want to talk about here, because Jayden Daniels looked great when his team needed it most at the end of this game. Didn't look great throughout. Some designed run that did get him to the end zone twice. But what are you seeing in the passing game right now for Daniels that's making the job a little bit harder than it was those first 7 weeks?
I think he's just missing throws that he was making the first 7-8 weeks of the season. We know he had the rib injury and was a little banged up halfway through the season, and maybe he's not 100%, but you could argue, guys, that no one is 100% at this point. And the plays that came easy, and I don't want to put this on Cliff Kingsbury in terms of scheme, because he's the same guy he's always been. Guys are open. They're not connecting for whatever reason. You talk about the last 15 minutes of that game, Joe, where it felt like Jayden Daniels turned a corner. You have to figure out how to do that sooner. And by the way, on defense, I know this defense isn't lights out. I think Dan Quinn's done a lot of smoke and mirrors in terms of getting the most out of this unit. I think you have to be able to shut down Cooper Rush, and you can't have Rico Dowdle go for 86 yards and expect to win a game at home like this that you should win to maintain your spot in the NFC East there.
Maybe we are underselling the injury of Brian Robinson early in the game, because without him being a factor 100%, I know he went back out there and played, but he probably wasn't 100%, took away their ground game. And if you think back to when Washington was the talk of the town, their run game was really well, and it was because of Brian Robinson in conjunction with Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, but this Dallas D.
But Dallas D was playing inspired ball today. They played great ball.
I don't know what they told him before the game, but it worked.
Exactly, because now you got the quarterback that's not running like he used to run. The running game is not there because of Robinson's injury, and so now you have to completely rely on a passing game. And if we're being completely honest, pound for pound, personnel for personnel, this was a great matchup for the secondary of the Cowboys versus this Washington Commanders receiving corps.
Take no opponent lightly.
Right.
It is a lesson learned here and a lesson learned elsewhere here on Sunday.